Okay, today's lecture is about careers and work, so this will be the last for this section. So usually when I talk about careers and work, I start with this term called sex role spillover. Just think about the gender stereotypes we talked about before. Sometimes these bleed over into the workplace, according to this. I think it's a researcher called Nivek, Nivek. But anyway, like if women are expressive or submissive, maybe they take more expressive or submissive roles in the workplace. And the same thing for men, if they're more dominant or their emotions are more reserved. We haven't got to emotions yet, but maybe those are the kind of roles they fulfill in the workplace. Now, if we look at this right here, sex typed jobs, that's hard to say. Linda Brannon says that the majority of people still pick sex type jobs. Maybe not secretary as much anymore, but like think about construction workers. I mean, a lot of them are men. So I have a lot of slides, I think, maybe not a lot, but about 4 or 5 slides that show this. Like in Britain, this is from 2008. If you start to look at this, the red is women. So nurses, okay, and cleaners. The blue is men, engineers, doctors. And so there's still some sex typing going on. In 2013, who are secretaries? The red is women. Who are sales and customer service? Women. Teaching? Women. What is for men? Down here, if I can get a different color pen, science and research. That's why the STEM stuff is so big. Skilled trades, electrical, IT, construction, all these different things. So if I move on to this one, I think this is United States of America just 6 years ago. The brown, I don't know why they made it brown, but the brown is the men. And so you can see all the way over here the men careers. And the green is the women. If I can get green on here, you can see all the green careers right here. Okay, what are green careers? Food service, high school teachers, nurses, secretaries, receptionists. What are brown careers up here? Truck drivers, electrician, all these kind of stuff. Typically male dominated careers. Now, one of the things that they found, and this is continuing, is that more females are starting to move into typically male dominated jobs. Not as many males are moving into female jobs like hairdresser or secretary. Okay, and I'm making generalizations here, but if you think about it, when I showed this before, that means you're emasculating yourself in a patriarchal society. If women are moving up the ladder, even if they're adopting male traits, they're moving in the right direction according to this kind of society. And that's why I mentioned this before. The Meet the Parents is so silly because it has a lot to do with that emasculation. Like, why don't you just pick to be a doctor instead of a nurse as a guy? Okay, so this next section is called the wage gap. And so the wage gap has to do with the fact that no matter what category of job you pick, women make less than men at that job. So what does that mean? And say if you're both like an accountant and you do the exact same work, women make less than men for doing the exact same work. And this has been going on for decades. If you're a girl, I can't imagine you would be mad about this. Look at August 2014 for restaurant workers. Managers, $17 an hour. For females, it would be 14. Bartenders, 13.88. Females, 12.17 an hour. Right, and so even cashiers are 4 cents more an hour on average. So no matter what category they picked in the restaurant industry, that men were making more than women for doing the exact same work. Now, this is something that I got in 2002, so it's a little bit dated, but I went through all these different categories, and even categories like secretary, men still make a little bit more money than women in a traditionally female occupation. Shouldn't women have the advantage in those occupations? Now, on average, for decades, women earn less than men in every category of job. I think I have this thing I did in 2005 from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, And when I did it, I went through all this data, I crunched the numbers, and on average, whatever weekly salary for men was this and women was this. And when I divided the two, it was like 81 cents on the dollar. It's like, so for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 81 cents. You say, oh, well, it's like, yeah, but if I make $100,000 as a dude, you make $81,000 as a girl for doing the same work. So that's a big deal, right, girls? Okay, so this one I really like. It's kind of maybe hard to read, but the green is what women make. And so from 1980 to 2010, it was going up, but still it was only 77 cents on the dollar. Now, one day I was at the doctor's office and I picked up a copy of Newsweek magazine. It was 2012, and here's what it said. It verified my 81 cents on the dollar. And so this is the figure that I want to talk about and go into more detail. Why are women making so much less money than men? Okay, so why is there this wage gap that I've been talking about, this 81 cents on the dollar? I have 4 different reasons coming up for the wage gap that I got from the literature. Now, the first one is just plain old-fashioned discrimination. I mean, it's going on for years, right? In a patriarchal society, males have been favored towards females, sons towards against daughters, right? So Steinpress in 1999 did one of my favorite studies of all time. What did he do? They send out resumes, and all they do is just substitute the name. And so it's the same exact resume, but they'll either put a name on it, like if I have on here Frank Smith or Jane Smith. And guess what? Frank gets a lot more callbacks, but it's the exact same down here as all the exact same stuff. So shouldn't it be based on their qualifications? What I argue in my class in person, if we were in person, they also use things like Jane Smith versus, I don't know, Ernesto Gonzalez. You know what I mean? Like, they know your ethnicity to a certain extent. If you seem whitish or you seem of some kind of other, I mean, it goes on. So right now we're not talking about racism, we're talking about sexism, but that ism goes on based on the name or the picture and not so much the qualifications. That should get you fired up. Now, most people don't know this lady by her real name. Why? She's a famous lady, but she wrote as a man, George Sand, if I can get a different color pen over here. Because people wouldn't take her seriously if there was a female name on the book. Everybody's like, man, that George can really write. Yeah, she sure can. Oh, I don't have my pen on here. She sure can, right? But she had to cloak herself with a male pen name, a pseudonym, I think that's what they call it, and that way people would take her work seriously. So that's the first one. The second one is negotiation. This is what I'm terrible about. I mean, I would get into jobs and I go, wait a minute, we're doing the same job and you make a lot more money? How come? And it's like, this is what they argue. Peterson in 2000 argues there's not really discrimination in the tech organizations that he looked at. And he looked at them for 10 years, so it's a long study. But what he did find, there wasn't discrimination, but what he did find is negotiation difference. Because their starting salaries, and this is where I get fucked, because I go, okay, I'll just take that much money, and other people argue, no, I'll do this. Same thing at the car dealership, you know what I mean? I'm not good at negotiating. I go, just yes, I guess. I'm just glad to have a job. Give me whatever you want to pay me. And other people are like, fuck that. And maybe men are more likely to say fuck that and argue over their initial salary than women, because it goes back to that compliance thing, or men are given more favoritism, whatever. But this is what he found, is the negotiation ability might have some bearing on how much you make initially. And so if I start off here and I start off here and you start off there, even as we advance through the company, you're always going to be trailing behind me. I hope that part made sense. Okay, so number 3, self-verification. Your beliefs about yourself. We've talked about this one, I think, on the last section. Make you avoid certain careers, right? So it's like, I don't take STEM classes, and therefore that limits my, ability to have certain jobs, and then I get stuck in dead-end jobs, because And then this goes, see, I knew I couldn't do it because I'm not good at math. Now, I don't know if this is a real thing, but this is why we're trying to change women's beliefs about their STEM ability so that they're not in these kind of careers and they can advance up the ladder. The final reason I have for the wage gap is disruption in career path. I think this might be the most important one. I worked in corporate America for a long time, but as a woman, you might have to juggle, be a working mom and also be like an at-home mom. Guys probably don't have to do this as much. Maybe that's changing. I hope it is. We'll talk about this later. But employers know that women might have kids and have to take time off, or they might have to take time off because their kids are sick, or this, that, or the other. And this might mean lower wages, and this is less advancement for women on average. Because the employers, when they hire a lady, they kind of go, yeah, but she might get pregnant, or she's a woman, and this, that, and the other. And they might not even think about that, but this has been going on for years, and it's been changing maternity leave and these kinds of things. But the other thing is that most husbands, on average, make more money than their wives. So if someone has to sacrifice their career for the kids, it's more likely the wife. Now, I don't know if this is still true, but this is based on the literature. It has been true for years and years and years. And so women who focus all the time on their career, like if men work 60 or 70 hours a week, oh, he's just like providing for his family, good provider. He's just like going. If a woman does the same thing, it's like, oh my God, she doesn't spend any time with her kids. Well, the guy's not doing it. Yeah, but there's this duality for women because she's a mother. She's supposed to spend her time with her kids, and then guys can kind of get off the hook because they're just being a good dad. Are you following my drift? Okay, we'll come back to this later on when we get into relationships. Okay, so the next section, 3 barriers to advancement for women. These are pretty easy. The first one, I think I have it on here, is the glass ceiling. And the glass ceiling, there's a glass ceiling commission. I don't know if it's still there, but like in Washington, D.C., where they investigate this. These unseen barriers where women work their way up, and then it's like, oh, yeah, but you can't be the leader or the CEO. I mean, you can stay down here, but that has to be a man. You see what I mean? And so this has happened not only with women, but with minorities. Even in the NFL, it's like, oh, you can't be the quarterback. For a long time, if you were African American, like they wouldn't make you the quarterback. Now it's like, people have broken through that barrier, right? It's a great thing. So, but there still is barrier in a lot of companies where you think you'll work your way all the way up to the top, but you need it to be a man. So that's number one. Okay, number 2 is the sticky floor. Sticky floors for women and minorities, or anybody really. I was kind of mentioning this one maybe a little bit before. You get stuck in these low status jobs. And you want to get, advance in the company, but everybody sees like, but no, you're the guy that takes out the trash and works in the mailroom. Now, this is why I love Eric Spoelstra. I don't know if you know him, the coach of the Miami Heat, because he started off just making videotapes in the tape room and worked his way all the way up to be the head coach and won championships. It's the fucking bomb. You know what I mean? That he didn't get stuck on the sticky floor because he is not, of the advantaged class. You know what I mean? And so he got a chance. It's very, very great. So that's the second one. The third one is the glass escalator. I alluded to this one earlier, that men have advantages even in female-dominated professions, like secretary or librarian. So even in professions where we see that as a female profession, at the very, very top, men are advanced. I think I read this thing about the New York library system, and there was just this librarian that was male there. I guess the head of the whole system walked through and was like, what is he doing sitting on the floor like reading books to kids? And within a few weeks or something, he was just advanced all the way to the top, and all these other librarians that have been there for years were going, why is he all the way up at the top? He just started. It's because he was a dude. So that's number 3, which is the glass escalator. Okay, this next section I really do wish we were in class, but it's on tokenism. So what does this really mean? Well, traditionally, a lot of different careers have been dominated by white men. Don't get me started on white men. I'm a white man, but whatever. So when you try to mix these careers up and bring in some new people that aren't white men, they stick out. I mean, if you hire someone who's black or who is disabled or who is Muslim, they're going to stick out in the office place and they're going to get treated different. If nothing else, you're going to notice them a lot. And so this whole section on tokenism is kind of the bad side of diversity. I love diversity. I think we need more diversity. I'm for affirmative action. So here's Carly Fiorina. Maybe you don't know who she is, but she was actually running for president, not in this election, but the previous one against, Trump. She was one of the 17 candidates, that was in the primaries. Anyway, why was she in the primaries? Well, she's kind of famous because she was one of the first female CEOs in the whole United States of America. She might have been the first. I think she was the first. And so everybody's like, oh my God, finally a woman is a CEO, broke the glass ceiling. But there's all this spotlight on her performance. And what happened over the next few months, she started doing really bad and the company went into the trash. But it wasn't all her fault. But it was like, oh my God, see? I told you a woman couldn't do it, because the spotlight was so heavy on her. Like if a man had taken that job and failed, we wouldn't have even heard about it in the news. But there was all this news coverage and this, that, and the other, and then people were going, I told you a woman couldn't do it. See, that's the bad side of bringing a token in. If they don't perform well, it kind of confirms the stereotype of the token, which I think, if I segue right, is stereotype threat. Stereotype threat is this fear about confirming the negative stereotype about your group. It's like, oh my God, they say that girls can't, do this in the military, whatever. God, what is that training? Now, that's not Navy SEALs, but the first, woman Green Beret or whatever. That women can't go through this kind of training. It's like, oh, if I go in there and then I confirm the stereotype. I don't know if you've seen G.I. Jane with Demi Moore. It's like, then I'm going to fuck it up for all women. Not just me, but for all women. Now, here's the example I use. You might not like him, but I like him. Mr. Obama. When he came into office, it's like, okay, you're the first black president. If you F this up, you're not just effing it up for you, but for all black men. And so there was a lot more spotlight on him. If you're just another white president and you screw it up, it's like we've had a lot of white dudes screw it up. So, we don't remember you as much. But if you screw it up, I don't know if you know Wanda Sykes, but she has this whole routine about this. Like, when you get into the office now, you do this, that, and the other because you don't want to confirm these negative stereotypes that all the white people are going to think about you. Okay, enough about that. Now, there's this thing called subtle ostracism. What does that mean? Benokratis talked about it in 1997. He says, not only do women hit this glass ceiling, I've mentioned this before already, minorities also hit it. And what happens? Well, when you're hired into the workplace as a token, it's like, yeah, you're going to have a job and there's your desk and everything else, but we're not inviting you to lunch and to go play golf with us and all this other stuff. So you're excluded from all these other activities, but yeah, you work at the same place as we do. I hope you don't know what I'm talking about right now. Don't get me started. You know what I mean? Because this subtle ostracism is where it all begins. And then also it starts to verify you don't have the opportunities that the other people have. Like my sister has moved all the way up in corporate America, but one thing she learned right away? How to play golf. So when the guys go, oh, we're going to play golf, and she goes, well, let me grab my clubs. Because we're going to talk on the golf course and make some, deals. And so she didn't put up with the subtle ostracism. She was able to break through in this way. Now, self-fulfilling prophecies are one of the ways that we keep tokens down in the workplace. I think I have two ways right now that we keep tokens down in the workplace. We have these beliefs, look, we hired this person, whatever, that's Muslim or of color or that's, disabled. They're not going to be able to do the job. That's your thought. And then what do? I subtly ostracize them, don't invite them to lunch, don't invite them to golf, do these things. And then I turn around and they don't have the same opportunities that the white dudes have. And then I go, see, they're not very good. Out of 5, they're doing really poorly. We shouldn't have hired them. I told you they couldn't do the job. Just like Carly. Okay? I'm not saying that nobody, you shouldn't take responsibility for your own behavior, but a lot of times it's this subtle ostracism that's the part of the self-fulfilling prophecy that's really driving it. Now, the other thing that drives it besides self-fulfilling prophecies, this is number one, is the ultimate attribution error. I hope you remember this one. But when a token does good, you just go, oh, they got lucky. Like when a girl does good at the shooting range, oh, she just got lucky, beginner's luck. And if they fail, I told you girls can't shoot guns. See what I mean? And so this way, no matter how they perform, we can still have a negative stereotype about that token. This is why I love the ultimate attribution error. I don't love it that people use it, but it explains people's stupid, fucked up, stereotypes and how they hold on to them. Speaking of which, sometimes we know a girl, because we're speaking of sexism, succeeded. I hire a girl into the workplace that only guys are there, and gosh, she did succeed. She is like kicking ass. She can shoot the gun. And then I go, you know what? She's not really like a girl. I mentioned this before. Or she's trying so hard that other girls just don't try that hard, and she's kind of overcoming her girlness. So I don't know if that fires you up, ladies, but anyway, that's everything for this section. Okay, so this section is one of my favorite sections. I know I say that about every section, but that's why I'm a psychology teacher. So I'm going to argue that men and women don't have the same communication styles. I know that's a stereotype, but it's not the nail. Don't you remember the video I showed you? And so there's a lot of stuff in the literature that would support me. This is the word I'm going to focus on, that women tend to, on average, be more democratic, and on average, men to be more autocratic. What does that mean? Autocratic. I'm the autocrat. I'm the king. You do what I say. I'm in charge. Democratic. Hey, where does everybody want to go for lunch? Okay, so there's a difference here on how you relate to people or how you communicate to people. Do you boss them around, or do you let them have input? Now, when I talk about democratic, there's two other words that I'll interchange and that you'll see in the literature. Communal, yeah, community. I ask everybody, right? Expressive, I relate to other people through my emotions. I'm not bossing them around. Agentic for guys is like autocratic. I'm an agent of change. I make things happen. Get out of my way. Let me show you how it's done. Same thing here. Instrumental. I'm the instrument of change. I'm a tool that makes things happen. And so maybe men and women relate to others in different ways. It's not that one is better than the other. Like I used to teach a class in industrial organizational psychology, and there was this thing called leadership match. Like if I'm going to have a drill sergeant, I want that motherfucker to be autocratic. You better be bossing people around, telling them what to do, because that's how you make soldiers. I don't want them going, hey, everybody, do y'all want to wear your uniforms today? It's like, that's not going to work. But in other things, like if I'm working in corporate America with a lot of really smart people, I don't want to come in there and start bossing them around. You should pay attention to this. I need their input because they might have a skill set that I don't, or have some information that I didn't think about. And if you took my other class in social psychology, I get into that in more detail. Now, there is this famous lady, Alice Eagley, sorry about that she has been doing research for decades, and what she has shown is that men, yes, tend to be autocratic, just like I was saying, and women tend to be democratic. Now, more and more, because women are assuming jobs that men had in the past, they're having to become more autocratic. But what she finds, this is the big takeaway, is that autocratic women are hated by both men and women. If they start bossing people around, what do they say about a woman that's being like real bossy? She's being real bitchy, and here you go. It's like, that's why I think people don't like Hillary Clinton, is because she has an autocratic style and she wants to take charge. It's like, wait a minute, why don't you just be a sweetsy kind of a girl? Speaking of that, I think I have this on the next slide. Ann Hopkins. Ann Hopkins was up for, I think, the top position in her company. And it demanded someone that was very masculine and could take charge and had this autocratic style, and she didn't get it. You can tell by her picture. She's not real girly. And then she sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they favored her. She won it. And why? Because she said they had put her in a double bind. They had told her to act more masculine, But then when she acted more masculine, see, female acting like a male, then she was accused of being too masculine and they wouldn't give her the job. You should be more feminine. You're too abrasive. It's like, yeah, but isn't that what you want? A bulldog? Kind of like I want my lawyer to be a bulldog, you know what I mean? And so I don't know if this makes sense, this whole act like a man thing. If you act like a man, then maybe you get promoted, but also you get discriminated against because you're not being girly. Oh, that's fucked up. Okay, so think about this. Remember the first day of class? Hey, why don't you just act like a white person and you'll be successful in white society? That's fucked up, right? That's that whole, what is it called? Assimilation. I couldn't remember the word right there. And so we used to have a word because it dealt with not this, but black people acting more white is bougie. And so Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you probably don't know who I'm talking about. He would act in a real white fashion, and then he was accused of being bougie, but he would be more successful in society if he gave up his traditional identity. Okay, I hope I did a good job on that section. Okay, this is the last section. I know it's really heavy, but you need to know about it. I'm sure if you've had a job for a while, they might have made you take, Title IX training or some kind of other training. So as far as the test goes, there's three different words I'm going to focus on. The first two come really out of Title VII, I think, in the 60s. And if Title IX rings the bell, like if you're an athlete, I mean, equal opportunities for male and female athletes, stuff like this. And gender harassment is relatively new, and so I like this one the best, and I'll talk about it at the very last. Okay, so the first one, quid pro quo. It literally in Latin means something for something. There's an exchange here. Give me sex and I'll give you a job. That's why it's the most damaging. When I think about this term, I don't know if you remember the movie Silence of the Lambs. He says to Clarice, quid pro quo, Clarice. You tell me something about your childhood, I'll tell you something about the killer. Okay, so this is why it's so damaging. You have to give sex in exchange to be hired, to get a promotion, to keep your job, to avoid, getting demoted down the ladder. And so that's kind of weird. You know what I mean? That should be out of our society completely. And so that's why it's right at the top of the list, the most damaging kind of sexual harassment. Okay, number two, hostile environment. Now, hostile environment means unwanted sexual attention. I kind of think it's a component of a lot of workplaces. Now, women are the most common targets of this, and it is the most common form of harassment. The first one is the most damaging. This one is the most common. Now, I have this, please don't write all this stuff down, but the reason I say a lot of workplaces are like this is don't we make sexual jokes in all workplaces? Or we make personal remarks, maybe not about sexuality, about appearance? I don't know. And this is the movie I always point to that I think they should retitle Hostile Environment. It's called Anchorman. That's all they do the whole movie is every single thing on the list. You know what I mean? So when I talk about this unwanted sexual attention, I have this study from Gutek in 1985, one of my favorites, because they asked men and women, if a guy came on to you or a girl came on to you at the workplace, what would you feel like? And this is what guys said. If a girl came on to me, 66% of men says that would be cool. And 60% of women said if a guy came on to me at work, that wouldn't be cool. And so this is how guys and girls are different. Now, besides this, I have this other slide from Saul, 1989. In 1989, he showed men and women a videotape of a man and woman having a conversation here on the TV. They looked at the conversation on the TV, and then he says, hey, when that lady smiled, what did it mean to you? And this is what guys said. Guys said, oh, she was coming on to him. She likes him in a sexual way. Because guys are dummies. And girls go, oh, no, she is just being friendly. That's why I want to go into this thing, which is inappropriate, but it's called resting bitch face. It's like guys don't have an analogous process, resting dick face. Maybe they do. I gotta act like a badass everywhere. I can't be all smiley and whatever. But girls, if you smile at all dudes, they're gonna start going, oh, she wants to have sex with me. She likes me. It's like, no, she doesn't, dummy. She's just being friendly. Okay, so I'll get off of that. So number three, gender harassment. I wish they just call it gender discrimination because that's what it is. You make hostile remarks or degrading comments about the abilities of men or women. Like, oh, women can't shoot guns, or men are stupid, they can't figure that out. So that's not really about your sexuality or having sex or anything. That's just about how your category, it's kind of like racism, but it's sexism, right? Or I refuse to hire you because you're a girl. I have this joke. I want to go to Hooters and like be a waiter. It's like, but Tim, you don't have any boobs. It's like, yeah, but they're being sexist. And so it is sexism. A lot of times it is directed towards women. And this is the other category that has been included underneath gender harassment, which I'm so happy about, is the LGBT community. Maybe not T though, but used to, up until last year, if your boss found out you were gay, you could get fired. That's fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? What does that have to do with anything if you're a good employee? Now gay people are finally protected, and maybe transgender people will be next. I have one last slide that has to do with hostile comments about the abilities of women. And here it is. I'm going to return to my little movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the ladies. I mean, they rev my engines. That's the, whatever hostile environment part, but they don't belong in the newsroom, her abilities. I'm a man who discovered the wheel and built the Eiffel Tower out of metal and brawn. You're just a woman with a small brain. That has nothing to do with having sex with her. Has everything to do with degrading who she is and her abilities based on the category of woman. Okay, I hope I did a good job with the lecture today. I will see you next time.